Hi, I'm Sean, and today we're going to talk about validation. We'll define validation, we'll look at it in a couple different lenses, couple different angles, and we'll see how powerful validation can be when we are validated, when we validate others, and how it can kind of shift our perspective in a lot of things in life. So let's talk about validation. Validation can have a few different meanings to it and so forth, but just to summarize it, to me, validation means I see you. I see you, and now to what degree I see you can shift, alter, and change depending on what life hands to us and so forth. But validation means I see you. You exist. You matter. You exist to me. You exist in this relation to earth, life, and so forth. It basically gives us space to exist, permission at times. So validation can also be seen sometimes as if you get hit by a wave and you're tumbling and you don't know which way up and down is, you got to catch your breath. Validation can be that pivotal moment where your foot touches the bottom and you know you're going towards the surface. A lot of times in life, we spend a lot of energy trying to explain to other people or express our emotions, verbalize our needs and so forth, trying to get our needs met. But sometimes it's not just about problem solving. Sometimes it's about see me, I exist, give me space, allow me to take up space in this room. So validation kind of to me means I see you. It doesn't mean that you have to completely agree with everything the other person is presenting. I don't over-validate in the sense of like, yes, agree. I'm not overcompensating and kind of giving the person more. I'm agreeing with that kernel, that little bit of truth that I can see. So if somebody's super upset and they're throwing a tantrum, I don't have to agree to the level or to degree that their emotion is being shown, but I can agree or understand why they're throwing a tantrum, that they are upset in that moment. And that's the beautiful part that connects us. So validation can almost seem like I'm on my own island, I'm frustrated, I'm kind of throwing a tantrum. Somebody says something that's validating and it calms me. I look up, they see me. I'm happy for that. So when we talk about validation, let's just look at it briefly. You can validate different parts of yourself. So sometimes before we get too deep with it, there's surface validation, which just means our basic needs. So sometimes if I'm hungry, tired, or if I'm exhausted, I need to sleep, I need to eat something, or sometimes if I'm in pain and I'm actually physically hurt, sometimes solving it or helping me recuperate from that can feel validating as well. You are acknowledging, addressing that I am in some sort of discomfort or pain. So solving something at times can feel validating as well. But there's another side to validation too, which is our emotional distress. And that can get a little bit tricky at times when we try to solve someone's emotional distress. Sometimes it can come across as invalidating. Before we solve my being upset, so I'm upset that I can't get something, so you give it to me, kind of makes me happy, but first I kind of want to be acknowledged that I am upset in the first place. To me, one of the crucial factors in validation is the time. How much time we spend. So it's not about just solving it or not solving it. It's not just about the emotional side or not. It's about how much time we spend in each of these equations that brings it together. So when we validate ourselves, sometimes we hear the thing of fake it till you make it, kind of get over it, don't acknowledge it, and so forth. That could possibly have a time and a place for something, but when we're validating ourselves, it's important to first acknowledge that we're feeling a certain way for a reason. We're not feeling it out of nowhere. It might be an anniversary of something that's happening. We might have had a rough day yesterday that flowed into today. We might have woken up and not slept that well. There's numerous different reasons that possibly we are feeling the way that we're feeling. So to me, the first thing in validating the self is to acknowledge that we are feeling the way that we are for a certain reason. Then the next thing is to decide what we kind of want to do with that. Do we want to sit with it, let it wash over us for a little bit longer, or do we want to try to break out of it? What I mean by this can look like you're sad for something and possibly, let's use an example, the music you listen to. So if I'm sad about something, at times I actually want to listen to sad music and it feels a little bit better. Because I'm sad, the music is sad, it's a feeling of understanding from my environment. Sometimes I actually want to listen to happy music to get me out of that funk or that sadness. Either way is okay. It depends on what you are looking for. So first I acknowledge that I'm feeling a certain way and I'm not weird for feeling that way. It's there for a reason, whatever the reason might be. Then I kind of choose, do I want the environment to match my feeling or do I want to pull myself out of it? If I want to match it, then some soup, warm blankets, chocolates, whatever it is, I might go to those sort of basic comforts or some sort of song or music. If I want to kind of get out of it, I might actually start cleaning, being productive, or reaching out to a friend to hang out, or I might put on some like more happy tunes and stuff. But there's different ways. But the important thing, what I'm just trying to say, is that the time you spend in it is the validation on its own. And everybody has their own cues to know if they're sitting with it for a little bit too long and they need a little bit of help shaking out of it. But you yourself know that. So we sometimes feel the validation through our gut, heart, mind, and body, depending on what's going around us. Your gut sometimes gives you that cue that I feel seen, or your heart feels a little bit more steady and goes, ah, there I am. Or your mind kind of pulls you out of it. Your mind logically says this makes sense. Whatever the factors are, you feel the way you do for a reason. Look for that reason. And after that, then you decide, do you want to sit with it or pull yourself out of it? And depending on what that answer is, that can be a moment of validation, a part of the equation. When we seek validation from someone else, that can also look like possibly problem solving, seeing me and hearing me, or it can look like just sitting and existing with me. Validation from somebody else does not always look like problem solving or validate or see my emotions. Sometimes it can be just existence, witnessing somebody. So no words being said, but just sitting with somebody. So when we are trying to validate somebody else, there's more than three, but there's three factors. You can solve it, you can label the emotions, or you can just exist in that space. And any three of those can be something that's helpful to the individual experiencing whatever they might be experiencing. So if I sit with you with no words being said, that alone can feel validating because we're sharing a moment and I'm witnessing you. If I turn to you and I kind of tell you to solve it by getting out of the house, doing this or that, that at times can feel validating as well because we've helped solve the issue. But another thing also is just labeling the emotions that you're feeling. That means I see you. So I see you as an entirety, as a person, by just existing with you in a space. I see you as somebody who can help themselves or wants to get out of a certain feeling, so I can acknowledge and solve something for you. But I also see you as the emotions which exist with you. And that sometimes makes us feel safe. So I see you and we're safe. Those are two crucial factors in validation. So validation shifts and changes with us. Just like how we grow, we have different moments for validation. And validation doesn't look the same. Besides those existing with somebody, solving something, or labeling the emotions, besides those things, validation grows with us. What I mean by that is depending on the stage of life, depending on the age we are in, validation can look different, not just for the self, but more emphasis on the individual or the environment around me that I'm seeking validation from to know how I am. So we'll look at a couple of different stages for that. So very generally, you can see the theme. Very generally, there's three stages to us seeking validation depending on our age. So there's more, but there's an important factor of a stage, which is what we call 0 to 5. It's from 0 years old to 5 years old, where we're very, very caretaker oriented. Parents, guardians, we very much look to them because we have to. We need them to survive. So I cannot hold the information of I'm right, they're right, I'm wrong, they're wrong, I'm right, they're wrong, I'm right. Basically, they're my world because I need them for survival purposes. So I look at them and whatever they kind of do, I identify that as a fact. So if mom or dad or my caretaker or guardian exhibits some sort of behavior or wants me to act a certain way, I generalize that, and I think that is a factual statement. I don't necessarily look at that as an opinion. So whatever mom and dad say, whatever my guardian says, it's a fact. So you can see how at the beginning of, to me, validation, we do kind of place ourselves a little bit second for the purposes of survival. Whatever somebody else, more importantly, caretakers say, has to be a fact. If it wasn't a fact, I wouldn't be alive. And because I'm alive, whatever they have done has helped me survive. So that's 0 to 5. That's a very general perspective of it. But that's like what I look at with the stage of validation. Mom, dad, my dad's, my mom's, whoever is taking care of me, my foster parents, whatever they do is a fact when I am 0 to 5. I need them for survival purposes. They are my world. They're the only things I've kind of been exposed to so far. Now, as we shift from that 0 to 5, everyone does it at different ages, but let's say, for example, 5, you start going to school. So now your world becomes a little bit larger. So you got, let's say, family, your caretakers, but now you have your peers. So you're going to school, and whatever the facts were at home, you carry that now into the school. So take your shoes off before you come to the house, wash your hands before you eat, whatever other subtle things. You bump into somebody, say you're sorry. You want to speak, you got to speak loud. You got to wait your turn. Whatever the construct becomes at home, you carry that to the school with your peers. But what happens now is that we start seeing that the facts at home are not necessarily the facts at school. Now we're introduced to like 2 different ways possibly to do something. And now we start seeing, okay, we see house, whatever the home parents say is a fact, and now whatever peers and teachers say is a fact. So you can see how we're kind of getting pushed back a little bit more. So they take the lead, facts. I have to, in order to survive, agree with this, agree with that. So now there's 2 things taking the forefront, and we kind of go back a little bit into the background. Now, fast forwarding, the next stage is, let's just say when you're 17 or 18, you become an adult. And let's say you go to a college experience, or let's say you don't go to college, whatever it may be, around that age of 17 or 18, something inside of us shakes us. And we kind of think to ourselves and we go, we thought everything that the parent or the guardian said was a fact. So we're talking about validation, but it was a fact. Anything our peers and our teachers said was a fact. Slowly at the age of 17 or 18, we start realizing that those weren't facts. Those were opinions. They were just guidance on how to possibly live our lives and how to possibly social construct and how to think. 17 or 18, we started realizing, well, if we treated facts like opinions and we based our reality or our own narrative or our own character, whatever we want to label it as, based upon those things of like, those are facts, but they're actually opinions, well, then I think to myself, who am I? So at this stage of 17 or 18, give or take, we become very, I don't want to say we become very selfish. But it's not selfish in an evil way, but selfish in a sense of, I want to take up more space now because that was an opinion. I thought it was facts. I went to the background. Now I'm starting to realize that was an opinion, not a fact. That was an opinion, not a fact. Who the heck am I? Now I'm going to start actually taking up more space because I need to know who I am. I need to identify myself. So I'm heavy in the stage now of self-validation, but I still want validation from the environment around me, but I want to take up more space now because I want to figure myself out. So we have that 0 to 5, we have that 5 to 17, we have that 17 plus. So we can kind of look at it as 3 stages, right? We're very guardian, caretaker oriented, very peer oriented, and then we're very self-oriented. And all 3 of these present stages that we find validation, self, through others, through the environment. Bridge. Remember our other videos. So there are other things within this too. So other first that we seek validation, kind of rules and so forth, but it's a little bit off topic, but your first job, your first relationship, laws, rules of the land, ethical things. All of these also go into an umbrella of validation, but we won't get into the kind of those things because then we're going to start getting into character narrative and constructs. And I want to seek a little more to validation, even though those overlap who we identify as and so forth. But so you got the 0 to 5, 5 to 17, 17 plus, you got the guardians, you got the peers, you got the self. And those are 3 stages of validation. Now brings us to another interesting perspective if we dive into that 0 to 5 and pull it out and look into it a little bit more. We'll get into it in just a moment. So part of validation, as we mentioned earlier, the validation grows with us and it changes just like how we change. Well, hopefully as we change, we become a little bit stronger as well. I don't necessarily mean physically stronger. I just mean emotionally, intellectually stronger. And once we're more emotionally stronger, it means we can start holding a little bit more weight. This is an important side of validation. What I mean by that is validation can also look like holding 2 truths simultaneously. And what I mean by that, it's a DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy perspective, but I'm not talking about that. I'm more talking about Eric Fromm, that kind of perspective. And what I mean by that is conditional and unconditional love. We learn these characteristics from typically parents, but it could also be a parental figure or like an uncle, a brother, whatever it may be. But we learn about unconditional and conditional love by how it is given to us. So an example of this, which maybe we've used before, but it can be, I try my hardest at something and I failed. Growing up, it doesn't make sense to us. If you tried your hardest at something, then you should have succeeded. But when we bring in conditional, unconditional love, what happens now? Do I give myself love? Well, no, because I failed. I didn't pass the task. But then where does the love come from? So what we mean by that is there is in life, the way we validate ourselves is that we show unconditional love to ourselves because we are trying our best and we're human. We have faults. We have ups and downs in life, just like remember how Mother Nature has seasons. We have seasons as well. And that's how we can always carry that with us. I love myself unconditionally because I am me and I exist and I'm human and I'm trying my best. Then on the other side of it is the conditional love. I love myself based upon the way I treat other people, if I accomplish certain tasks, financial goals, career goals, if I'm married, if I'm not, whatever it is. But I have these conditional loves that I put onto myself too. In life, we flip like a light switch back and forth from these. I love myself unconditionally because I'm worth it. I love myself conditionally based upon the accomplishments I have. When we are able to bring these two together and dip into both of these simultaneously, that's when another concept comes up, that we are able to parent the self. And the ability to parent the self is a huge part, to me, about validation. Because if we cannot get validation from others, how do we give it to ourselves? If we can't give it to ourselves at times, how can we seek it through others? And if we have one flame that's lit, either external or internal, then that flame can be used to light the other one simultaneously. It gets difficult when both of these flames are out. If both of them are on, then hey, more power to you. But if both of them are out, so the way that I am given as I'm growing up, conditional and unconditional love through mom, dad, through dad, through dad, through mom, whoever my caretakers are, single parent. It's basically like that good cop, bad cop. I exist, therefore I'm deserving of love. But if I just have that love and not the conditional, then I kind of become everyone out of my way. I don't care about anybody else. I'm better than everybody else. And if I only have the conditional love, I love myself only if I accomplish certain things, well, then I beat myself up a lot. And I'm always looking for the next thing to accomplish because I'm always chasing love. But if we have both of these things, it's a balance of both of them. If we have both of them, we can allow ourselves to parent the self, to give ourselves those soothing words for validation, to get over dark times. And then we also have the ability to seek validation from others. Both of those together is a beautiful touch. I just want to mention a brief thing about the unconditional and conditional love. What I'm about to say is a biased opinion. It does not mean it's a fact by any means or anything like that, but unconditional love can be something tricky. To me, unconditional love is only meant from a parent to a child. If we give unconditional love to other people without that conditional love, at times we can be taken advantage of. And also, that unconditional love can set poor boundaries. Unconditional love is only meant from a parent to a child and for the child to give to themselves. We can look at a different perspective and say later on in life, everything kind of flips and stuff, that sooner or later the child can return unconditional love to the parent. But at the beginning, the initial get-go, until we're able to parent the self, unconditional love is only meant from the parent to the child and the child to give to themselves. Once we give unconditional love to an external, to somebody else, we can sometimes set poor boundaries or be taken advantage of without that conditional love as well. So I will borrow a little bit from DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, with regards to validation and what it can look like more specifically. What I mean by that is DBT says there's 6 different ways of showing validation to somebody. So we can pay attention, and we'll get into each of them very briefly and stuff, but so we can pay attention, we can reflect back, we can read minds, we can understand, we can acknowledge the valid, and we can also show some sense of equality. So let's look at each 6 of those very briefly to see what validation can possibly look like as an exchange. So one way that we show validation is by giving somebody our undivided attention. So analogy is used a lot of times and stuff like that we're always very go, go, go. And since we're so go, 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 a lot of times we feel that we can multitask. So what we see very common nowadays is somebody who is speaking and also on their phone. So somebody's speaking to me and I'm listening to them, but I'm also on my phone. That at times can feel very invalidating. Not always, but it can feel kind of invalidating. So sometimes we validate by giving somebody our attention. We pay attention to them. And I know there's different cultural factors too with eye contact and so forth. But generally speaking, we face them, we put our things down, electronics aside, and we're looking at them and we're listening to them. And our facial expressions can change at times, but we're giving them our attention. Nothing else matters. They're the ones in our world right now, and that can feel very validating without even saying or doing anything else. Just giving somebody our attention, at times, it feels really great. Another way to show validation is to reflect back. So we talked about giving somebody our undivided attention, and another way is to reflect back. What I mean by that is, in a conversation and dialogue, when somebody is speaking, every now and then we might reflect back and say the statement that they just said. So if I'm speaking to somebody and I'm saying, wow, I'm really shook up. I had an argument with a friend of mine, and I don't feel like they heard me, and I'm feeling upset because at the end of it, they didn't apologize, blah, 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 all this good stuff. I can turn in that conversation and go, wow, it sounds like you're still kind of upset about it. It sounds like they didn't apologize at the end of it. I'm just reverberating or just kind of reflecting and just kind of mentioning or expressing things that they have already said, whether it's emotional or fact-based of action-wise. And that on its own lets me know, as somebody who is speaking to somebody else, that they're paying attention, they're reflecting back things that I'm saying. They're in this. They're allowing themselves to be a part of the conversation, and I feel more heard, and I feel like it is an actual exchange or participation that we are doing together. So that's another way of validation. Another is what DBT says, read minds. Reading minds means anticipating or seeing what is not being said. So the example given is, let's say a coworker is asking me for a ride after work, and I'm saying, sure, I'll give you a ride, but I am presenting very exhausted. I'm like, oh man, yeah, I'll give you a ride and stuff. So I'm saying something, but you're picking up on different cues of me physically feeling exhausted and taking deep breaths. So at that time, what can be sometimes validating is to turn to the person and go, you know what? You seem like you're really tired. Let me see if I can find a ride from somebody else, or I'll call a driver service, whatever it may be. The other person then turns and kind of says, no, 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 really, it's okay. Then we do our thing and we get a ride. But sometimes we feel stuck in saying what we feel is appropriate to say, and we block ourselves. And so the other person sometimes can pick up on what's not being said by physically what's being presented. And that helps us feel validated as well. It's like, thanks. Yeah, I really didn't want to go out, or thanks. Yes, I wasn't really looking to give you a ride. I apologize. Don't apologize. You're tired. You're a human being, and it's understandable. So it's reading between the lines and what's not necessarily being said, but what you're picking up on. Another way to validate is to understand. So what it looks like is to zoom out and to see the bigger picture of things. So if you're close to somebody or you kind of have a few discussions with them, you can kind of go, yeah, that makes sense because a week ago, 2 weeks ago, this incident happened. And so it looks like it's still carrying with you. But basically, see the person as they exist in that moment, as they're describing themselves, but also the ability to zoom out when you understand that person, their patterns of like the way they feel, their relation to somebody else. So if somebody's talking about work and let's say they talk about a specific person at work, I go, oh, that's right. You like that person. I remember it from another time that we spoke. So I'm presenting a sense of understanding. I'm also labeling some emotions that they're feeling as well. Another way that we can show validation is to acknowledge the valid. What I mean by that is taking ownership. So if I know that I did something wrong and somebody comes to talk to me about it, we can validate by kind of going, yep, you're right. I apologize, I did do something that was wrong, or I'll fix it next time. That alone can also make it feel like, thank you. You see me, you hear me. So if somebody comes up to me and tells me it was my turn to do something and I didn't do it, I can validate by acknowledging that, yes, they are correct. I was supposed to be doing that thing and I didn't do it. So basically acknowledging the facts of the situation. Sometimes easier said than done, but that can also feel very validating too. Taking ownership and admitting at times when something is our faults. Lastly, to me, an interesting one, number 6, is to show equality. So I'm probably guilty of doing it myself at times, but an example of this is to not one-up somebody or to hijack the emotion or the story. So if I'm expressing something, let's say, for example, I say, my goldfish recently passed away and I'm feeling a little bit upset or sad about that. Sometimes we feel that we want to validate the person by going, oh, I had a goldfish pass away 2 years ago. I felt devastated. We want to share our experience to relate to them, to bring that drawbridge down, to go, I understand. But at times, that relating to it can hijack the story and make it a little bit more about ourselves. So we want to make sure we show equality by understanding that the person has something that they want to talk about. So we want to give them space, and then maybe we mention some things. But a lot of times, this happens in our back and forth in our dialogues, that somebody shares something and then we share our similar story to it, and it becomes a little bit more about us. So we want to be mindful because that can feel invalidating. Just like if we problem solve something a little bit too quick for somebody, it can feel invalidating, like they've been struggling with something for so long, and then they come in, you fix it, and they're like, I don't even feel seen. So that's the same thing with show equality. Give the space to the person. Don't hijack the story. Don't hijack the emotion. Don't take over it by sharing too much about the self. So one of the best ways for me to show validation is to ask the person at times what they need, what they're looking for. So that also puts a little bit of duty and obligation onto us to be a little more insightful with what we need. And if we don't know what we need, that's okay as well. But validation, it's a back and forth relationship, not just with ourselves, but with our environment and also the people around us. As long as those bridges are down and we feel connected, we can feel validated as well. That's our video for today. As always, appreciate you guys watching. That's our video about validation. If you liked the video, thank you so much. Until next time.